Alan Wake 2 is almost a masterpiece. It's unique, it's intriguing, it's original. It's one of the best survival horror games that isn't afraid to take risks and has its own identity, that remains tense while still having a sense of humor and not taking itself too seriously. It's the perfect balance. And this is easily one of the best games that released this year. Now, I saw some complaints. They told me that this game isn't Alan Wake. It's actually Alan Woke. They said that it was Alan Walk. The game is slow. Now I won't lie, it's slow at first, but it's not boring. There's a big difference. I was filled with intrigue the whole time, and the art direction itself was simply breathtaking. Anyone who had a problem with the first few hours of this game, to put it simply, is a complete unga bunga, pew pew, shoot 'em up merchant. I feel like the problem here was people had a preconceived idea in their mind that this was going to be Resident Evil, and that's definitely not what it is. But a game does not need to have non-stop action for it to be good, and this right here is a prime example of that.
Some say that it lives forever, this road that I lose you on every time. Some say that it lives forever, this road.
Now, as someone who admittedly did not play the first game, I wasn't exactly sure what I was getting into, and marketing material may have led you to believe that it's one story where you can choose who you play as, but it's actually more like two combined stories, and you choose which order to play them in, whether that's Alan Wake or Saga. And I just want to say, this is Remedy's magnum opus. It's all of the best aspects from their games put into one. Everything they've learned, everything they've done over the years, the TV sections from Quantum Break are perfectly done here. The tone, the atmosphere, the length, they don't overstay their welcome, and they're a breath of fresh air every time that you get one. Perfectly incorporating the two mediums together. Now, I couldn't get enough of how filmic the art direction of this game was. Playing through the game, I'd constantly stop and just look around. This level of creativity and attention to detail isn't often seen. The environments feel lived in down to small details like advertisements and posters on the wall, or the background NPCs. Ooh, I'm just, I'm getting excited just thinking about it.
So quiet. Now, why'd you go and do that? Stomping around like that and scaring the poor little things.
The tone, the atmosphere, everything here is an absolute masterclass. This is the best looking PS5 game I've played, and that's on medium settings, so I can only imagine how this game looks on PC. One thing that caught me off guard in this game was the sense of humor.
We're not gonna find out you're the Grand Wizard or something, are we?
I played some D&D back in the day. Wizard was always my favorite class.
There'd be different jokes throughout and a certain level of corniness that came off as funny and not cheesy. And it's all handled so perfectly that it doesn't ruin the serious tone of the game. It actually complements it really well. There are themes about creativity and writing and a whole lot of metaphors here, like your best work coming from a dark place, and sometimes they were a bit on the nose, but I like them nonetheless. And they use the narrative to its advantage because you're living out dreams and stories. The character self-narrating makes sense. So you know how sometimes a character in a video game will be talking to themselves and it's kind of awkward and kind of odd and kind of out of place? That doesn't happen here because narratively it makes sense. And there's a lot of times where they would do things like that. Things we kind of just ignore because they're video games. You know, what are you going to really do about it? Actually makes sense here. Another thing is there's times where they want you to just sit there and watch something. This can go on for like 5 minutes or so, it feels like, of you just watching a monitor or something like that. And what surprised me was I wanted to. I was compelled to. I was watching like Martin Scorsese, absolute cinema. And the story was good, you know, all the way up until the end, which is one of the major downsides I have. The other I get to in a minute, but it kind of just ends up being like, that's it. That's all. With heavy setup for a DLC or third game, which is really disappointing because it's like, damn. A certain character, I'm not going to spoil anything, felt really underused, and their story goes unresolved. A complete waste of potential. Is one of my favorite characters in this game. As for the jump scares in this game, they don't hit after the first 2 times. But the pacing here was pretty good, aside from one major flaw I get to in a second. But as for the characters, Saga and Wait, I found both of their stories interesting. I did not have that connection to Alan since I had never played the first game. And by the way, you don't have to for this game. It will make complete sense though, they explain everything. But I actually like Saga's parts a bit more, story and gameplay wise. But it wasn't a complete wash. It wasn't like I was playing with Wake and I was like, this sucks. It was, he had his moments, Saga had her moments. So it's a good balance though. Speaking of gameplay, you're not really gonna have that much action within the first 6 to 8 hours, I'll be honest. To me, that wasn't much of a problem. To you, it might be. To me, it helped with the tension because later on in the game, you're going to be like, man, I'm not scared of you anymore. I'm so powerful. I've killed tens of you by now. But the gameplay here is solid. The use of the torch, the weapons, the sound design, everything goes together nicely. And towards the back end of the game, yes, it does start to feel more like a Resident Evil game where there will be constant action. But I actually like this more than Resident Evil games. Another thing I like about the gameplay is it keeps you within the game. All tension, all cinematic. There is no press L3 and everything glows up and tells you where to go. It does a great job of naturally guiding you in the right direction of where you need to go with smart visual cues. There are a lot of unique levels in game design here. It's just a blast to play through. It's just fun. And I have no major flaw with the gameplay. It's not too stiff. The only real gameplay complaint that I have, is kind of a big one, the collectibles. They ruin the game for me. Now it's partly my fault because they're not forced upon you, of course, but I checked the trophy list and I saw, oh, this is a one playthrough platinum type of game. You just collect everything and shoot that, and okay, sure, why not? 2 birds, 1 stone. Don't make the same mistake as me. Now the tension and atmosphere is going to be ruined because you're going to have a YouTube video open showing you where to go for the collectible. It's going to ruin the pacing of the story because you're going to be running around with this slow movement speed that in general gameplay I don't think is an issue or a problem. But when trying to get around the map and collectibles, it is. Especially with no fast travel. Don't go for the platinum, people. Enjoy your first playthrough. And some minor negatives that I had as well, one of those things isn't tied to the quality of the game itself. It's a lack of a physical release. This is digital only. And another, you have to make sure the game is saved. Either keep going until you see that little circle in the top spinning, or go and save the game. I played for a good 25 minutes, said I better save, it's been 25 minutes. I went to bed, played it the next day, and had to redo it all over again. So make sure you save. But that's it. Story didn't end the best. Going for the platinum kind of ruins the game on your first playthrough, but that's most games to be fair. And a lack of a physical release. It's nice to have a well-written black female protagonist that isn't tied to a bad game. So when the game flops, the excuse is that it had a black female protagonist and not that the game sucked, you know. But this might be a weird comparison because this isn't a PlayStation first-party game. But hear me out whilst I go on a slight tangent that may seem random. This is a cinematic, third-person, over-the-shoulder, narrative-based shooter that takes place in the woods. That does not feel like a Naughty Dog game. It does not feel like typical PlayStation template, but it has that same high level of quality and shows that you can still stand out making this sort of game. I say that because I often hear, oh, because it's a third-person over-the-shoulder narrative game, it's trying to copy The Last of Us. Because a lot of third-person over-the-shoulder narrative games are trying to copy The Last of Us. But they never fully resonate because they're not Naughty Dog and they don't land. But this game here isn't afraid to take risks and have its own identity, so it does not suffer the same fate as these other games. To me, this game is a 9 out of 10. And if it could have stuck the landing better and I didn't ruin it for myself going for the platinum trophy here, this would have been a tough battle for my game of the year 2023.